Values. I'm your host, James Fletcher, with you as I am every week to catch you up on the latest in college basketball, all the news and notes. And this week, it's all about the NCAA tournament. We have made it to March Madness. We have a field of 68 teams. There was a bit of controversy on the way there. We had 5 bid stealers in the conference tournaments. And so the shortest field we have ever seen. We have play-in games that are going to happen for 10 seed spots this year, something that is unprecedented in the NCAA tournament. We're going to break it all down for you. What we're going to do here, we're going to open the show. I've got some thoughts on the selection committee, on the selection process, on the net rankings, the way this field was put together. We'll go through those, talk a little bit about how I did in bracketology in this first segment. Then when we come back, it will be the left side of the bracket. We're going to go through the East region and the West region together. We'll take you through the matchups, the potential upsets, who I'm picking, and what the route is to the Final Four. When we take another break, we come back in that third segment, and we will wrap up the show with the right side of the bracket. That is the South region as well as the Midwest region. So we've got a lot to get to, and we will get started right now. Selection Sunday has come and gone. It's now Tuesday. If you are watching or listening to this on whatever platform you consume Three True Values, first of all, thank you for listening throughout this entire season, throughout the history of this show and any other show that I've done. I appreciate those of you who do tune in. Now, let's talk about the selection committee, because they put together this field of 68 teams. I hit on 66 of 68 teams, so not too bad. But I felt like it probably should have been at least 67 of 68 in the field. The reason is because I just don't think, and this is not just my opinion, you look at the other bracketologists across the country, your Joe Lenardi's, your Jerry Palms. You think, okay, bracketologist, a little bit skewed in your idea because obviously you think you got it right. That's true, even though the three of us did not get the same field at the end of the day. You've got other people who you can look at in this profession, other analysts who you will look at from ESPN to CBS across the board, who will tell you the selection committee did not do a great job this year. I don't even think they did a good job this year. Let's go through just a couple of the obscure things that they did that make you question not only the selection committee, but the entire process that they went through to get to this point. Number one, and I think we'll start here because it's easy to start this conversation. And like I said, as a bracketologist, people can roll their eyes if they want to and say, look, you're just bitter because you didn't predict it, struggling with that word, predict it correctly this year. And that's fine. This is my first year doing this. And so while I was a little bit upset, I also understood, hey, I've got a better understanding of how this works now. I think the most head-turning, inexplicable, downright wrong thing that they did in this field, nobody can defend it, is putting Duquesne as an 11 seed going up against BYU. Now you ask, how does Duquesne, a team whose resume suggested they were likely a 13 seed, potentially a 14 seed, how do they end up as an 11 seed in this field? They end up ahead of McNeese State, of Samford, Grand Canyon. How does that happen? Well, here's what happened. The NCAA selection committee, which met and put together this field of 68, decided entering Sunday where the Atlantic 10 champion would slot in the field. Because if you look at that 11 seed, where it stacks up with the other teams, you would be able to justify putting VCU there based on their resume. However, when VCU was upset, they did not take the time to shuffle down these seeds. And I can tell you, they were not under some incredible time crunch to get this done. I was updating bracketology just about every 2 hours. And generally, when it was updated, it was a 15 to 30-minute window that I had after a game went final, or a couple of games went final. And so if I'm able to shuffle these seeds and figure out ahead of time, I knew before the end of that game where Duquesne should go versus where VCU would be, and I knew exactly how I could shift those teams. This team goes here, this team moves to this line, bang, bang, bang. It took me 3 minutes. So why can the selection committee not put in the effort to properly seed a team purely because of the day that their championship game was played? Why are we playing championship games on Sunday in the first place? If they're not going to take it into consideration, what is the point? Auburn fans have the same gripe. Why are we playing an SEC title game on Sunday if we're still going to be listed as a 4 seed when the bracket comes out? Kentucky gets a 3 seed. Auburn is the conference champion, just blew out Florida on a neutral floor, and they aren't rewarded in any way for it. What happens there? Why? The committee presets a lot of things, and I don't know if it's a lack of consensus or just laziness, but they did not change certain things about this bracket based on what happened in the final hours and really the final days leading up to this. Because you look at the results from Saturday night, and apparently those didn't matter either. NC State and Oregon, sure, you can put them on the 11 line if you want to. They're power conference champions. You put them right behind the play-in games, no issue with it. Although, if we were going purely off of resume, if conference championships don't matter the way that they had said in other parts of the bracket that they don't, namely New Mexico and Iowa State, which we'll get to in a minute, both of those teams, there were resumes better than what those two teams had. That's beside the point, though. We're not going to focus on them. Fine with them being 11 seeds. Works for me. However, we cannot have Duquesne where they were in the field. It's just wrong. It suggests also that UAB and Temple, if Temple had knocked off UAB, potentially we could have a sub 500 Temple team, which is being investigated for point shaving in this field as a 12 seed when they deserved a 15 seed. That would have been an absolute disaster. So the committee is just lucky that UAB knocked off Temple at the end of the day. That's where I stand on that. Talked about Auburn, the frustration that they should have. I think the other team that has a major gripe here, and a group of teams actually at the end of the day, but Iowa State, not only did they not make it to the 1 seed, which I have no issue with, I was split 50-50, maybe even 55-45 on believing that North Carolina could get that spot. But at the end of the day, the reason that I flipped my bracketology, even after I said I believed that the seeds were set, but I never could have predicted that Iowa State was going to do what they did to Houston on Saturday night. The way that they won that game, the dominant fashion in which they played, it has to mean something. If you knock off one of the top teams, according to the committee, the second ranked team, even after that loss, which is again a little bit suspicious. Why did Purdue not jump Houston? That one is a bit confusing. But regardless, UConn, Houston, Purdue. That's how the committee told us the 3 best teams were. Iowa State beats Houston in dominant fashion to win the best conference in college basketball after finishing second in the regular season in the best conference in college basketball. Their resumes, if you just line up resumes, Iowa State, North Carolina, right down the middle. Now, the metric that they wanted to point to, and they didn't just point to it for Iowa State, they pointed to it for a lot of teams throughout the night, was non-conference strength of schedule. Okay, Iowa State scheduled some cupcakes. All right, I get it. North Carolina has to play the bigger teams out there, and they beat some of them, but they lost to some of them. Okay, I'll take it. You want to argue that North Carolina has a little bit better strength of schedule? Cool. I understand. But how about strength of record? Because those two teams line up there. And that takes into consideration whether you beat the teams you were supposed to beat by the amount that you were supposed to beat them. Iowa State did that. Just because they didn't play some borderline quad one team, which doesn't even add up at the end of the day. Because the reason that Iowa State should be able to get away with a weaker, now I'm not saying, look, I get it. Iowa State played a really weak strength of schedule. We talked about this earlier in the season. TJ Olsenberger, the way that he was able to use his scheduling to create a good net ranking was, I think, really smart. Apparently, he's being punished for it. It's the only way to explain this. Because you can get away with playing worse teams, lower ranked teams, in the non-conference schedule when you know that you will play so many highly ranked teams in the conference schedule, so many good teams in the conference schedule, that you will catch up to North Carolina. They have the same record if you combine their quad one and quad two games. Same amount of wins. Okay? Same record overall. And the same amount of wins in quad one and quad two. So, in what way does Iowa State's strength of schedule in the non-conference impact what they were able to achieve over the course of the season? It doesn't. There's no situation where it does. How about Iowa State with 10 quad one wins? That's more than North Carolina has. Again, I think North Carolina had a completely justifiable case. What there was no case for is for Iowa State to be the 8th overall seed. That doesn't even compute. There's no way you list Marquette and Tennessee above them. Tennessee, okay, that one close, right? Marquette should not be ahead of them. There's just no way. You are punishing them for something that was never in the criteria in the first place. That should not be part of this. You say that the net rankings are the most important thing. Clearly, this year, non-conference strength of schedule, something that gives you no indication of how they perform, was the most important thing. Because you know what? They talked about when it came to, New Mexico, when it came to, all these Big 12 teams that were on the bubble, when it came to why the Mountain West was so low, they said, well, non-conference. They did this in the non-conference. Okay, but what about the other, I know people get mad when we can't just look at half the season. I would at least rather it be the half of the season that just happened. I would rather us look at what teams are than what they were in November and December. What a team is right now is way more important than what they were in November and December. But that's all the committees seem to care about. Florida Atlantic, 3 losses in quads 3 and 4. Their net numbers slid down significantly. They were in my last 4 in. They end up as an 8 seed. Now, if they had gotten a 10 seed, maybe a 9 seed, based on the reputation, based on what they did last year, I would have kind of rolled my eyes and been like, that's okay. But an 8 seed? There is no justification for that. There is no number you can look at that tells you that FAU is an 8 seed based on what they were able to do. That loss to Temple, in the conference tournament clearly meant nothing. Committee didn't consider it. Because before that loss, sure, you could have justified an 8 seed. You could not after that loss. But they gave them the 8 seed. So did that game not matter? I mean, that wasn't even a final. That was a semifinal. Apparently, it didn't matter. And for FAU, how about the fact that the committee chair then goes on to explain how their win over Arizona, that's part of why they're an 8 seed. Great that they beat Arizona. That's awesome. That also happened 3.5 months ago. 4 months ago, really. 4 months ago. This team has lost 3 games in quads 3 and 4. And our justification is that they won a game 4 months ago. All right. Now, a lot of this has to do with the need for an overhaul in the net rankings. New Mexico being ranked number 22 and the committee telling us that they weren't in the field without that automatic bid. They clearly punished the Mountain West. They wanted to send a message about their non-conference strength of schedule. They wanted to send a message about not believing in them the same way everyone else did, about they didn't care about them beating up on each other. It is what it is. New Mexico got screwed, but it's really going to hurt the teams that they have to play. New Mexico is going to face Clemson in the first round. We'll talk about that on the other side. This is 3 True Values with James Fletcher. Welcome back into 3 True Values. We start breaking down the bracket. It's here. It's great. I've made my picks. Maybe you've made your picks. Maybe you've been waiting. Maybe you've been holding off to the last second here. We're going to run through it. We're going to talk about all of the games that you need to know. Start in the East region. UConn, number 1 overall seed. They play Stetson. I think we can go ahead and push UConn through to the next round. FAU and Northwestern. Talked about FAU in that last segment. While I don't agree with the seeding, I think this is a great matchup. FAU and Northwestern, that's a fun game right there. I am going with Northwestern just because I haven't seen FAU turn it on in the way they were supposed to. They haven't looked like the team they were billed as in a while now. So I'm going with Northwestern. I think they've faced the grind of the Big Ten throughout the season. They've picked up some big wins. They've gotten up for big games. I am going with the Wildcats there. UConn over Northwestern in that second round to finish out the weekend. So keep rolling. San Diego State and UAB. I'm rolling with San Diego State here. I think that the way they play, that physicality, it took them deep in the tournament last year. And I think it's got potential to do so again. But it's not going to be easy because Auburn against Yale is on the other side of this one. Auburn, I think, rolls against Yale. I've seen some people mention them as a potential upset team. I don't view this Auburn team as upsettable at all. They are probably the least worry 4 seed that I have. I think this is Auburn team, the depth, first of all. The run that they just made through the SEC tournament, that looked like a team that can make some postseason noise in the NCAA tournament. And so you combine depth with a good run of form, with Bruce Pearl being able to coach that team. He's got veteran talent. They're not just a bunch of freshmen. They aren't super reliant on one thing. They're kind of a versatile team. And I like that. I think that this team rolls through Yale and gets to that game against San Diego State, where I think they are able to just top the Aztecs in that one. Now, that would set up UConn versus Auburn. Man, that would be a big game. I would go towards UConn just because I think UConn is just a level above everyone else in this field right now. But Auburn, I think, could give them one of the biggest fights of the tournament. I think that matchup would be huge in that Sweet 16 round. On the bottom half of this East bracket, we start with BYU against Duquesne. we're just going to give BYU a free pass since they were supposed to be a 5 seed, but because they can't play on Sunday, get knocked down to a 6 seed, combined with the fact that they're playing a team that has no business being an 11 seed. So give BYU a pass through to the next round. I've got Illinois over Morehead State. This Illinois team, they've looked really good. You look at their run on the way to the Big Ten title in that conference championship. Terrence Shannon playing really well right now. Marcus Damask. I like what they've been able to put together there. I've got Illinois over BYU in that next round. Like I said, this Fighting Illini team, they're hot right now. And I don't see them cooling off against that BYU team in that next round. Finally, we get to Drake against Washington State. I should say Washington State against Drake since they're the higher seeded team, but I am rolling with Drake here. Not a huge upset, 10 versus 7, but I like what Darian DeVries and Tucker DeVries bring. I think that they've got a nice roster around them. They shoot the ball well, and I like this team. I've liked them for a couple of years. I think he's a good coach. He's got a good player in his son to lead the team. And so I am rolling with them over a Washington State team that's only 3-3 in its last 3 games. Those are not 3 games against a bunch of world beaters either, if you look at who they faced. So the winner of that one will play Iowa State, who of course will roll past South Dakota State in all likelihood. But I don't think either of them can knock off Iowa State. I think Iowa State's going to come out with some kind of vengeance here, knowing that the selection committee really just did not value them at all. Did not care about their Big 12 title, did not care about anything that they were able to do. And it sets up an incredible matchup. Iowa State versus Illinois, the Big 10 champ versus the Big 12 champ. Doesn't get any better than that. Also, little side note here. This means that now in the Sweet 16 of this East region, we have UConn, the Big East champ, number 1 overall seed. Auburn, the SEC champ, who is top 5 at KenPom. You've got Illinois, the Big 10 champ, top 10. You've got Iowa State, the Big 12 champ, and top 10. I mean, just ridiculous to have this loaded of a Sweet 16 in one bracket, especially in the number 1 overall seeds bracket. It's a little bit absurd to have 2 underseeded teams in one region with the number 1 overall seed. It just feels wrong, but it's where we are. I'm rolling with Iowa State over Illinois and then UConn to go to the Final Four. So we move on to the West. This is the one. The West region, something's going to happen here. I'm promising you that. I don't know what it is. It looks like it's going to be chalk. It'll be North Carolina and it'll be Arizona, but I promise you it won't be. It's not going to be that easy. I can just sense it. I've got North Carolina winning in that first round over the 16 seed. I've got, and this game, we're spend a little bit of time on this game. Michigan State against Mississippi State. I went back and forth on this one for quite a while. I've struggled with it. I've settled on Michigan State, but I'm not supremely confident in that. This might be the closest pick'em in the NCAA tournament, at least in this opening round, that I can find. For me, Michigan State, a Tom Izzo team, Tom Izzo as an underdog, Tom Izzo in March, everything comes up Tom Izzo. Everything. Except for what this Michigan State team has shown us all season long. This Michigan State team has not shown us that they have all these characteristics that we assign to Tom Izzo teams in March. So is it going to click? Are they suddenly going to become that? We've seen it happen before. We've seen it not happen before. Time will tell what this Michigan State team is in March, but they're going up against a Mississippi State team. It's no slouch. Michigan State's not going to come in and hit them in the mouth and be more physical and just take over the game. They will hit back. They've got size. They've got strength. I mean, they can run so many big bodies at you. It's not even funny. And Chris Jans, who has an incredible track record in the NCAA tournament. So I don't think this one's going to be easy for either team. I think it's going to be one of the best games of the opening round. St. Mary's over Grand Canyon. This is a popular upset pick for a lot of people, but I think this St. Mary's team, because they play a different style from Grand Canyon, has a little bit of an advantage here in that they are the superior team in terms of talent. When you have more talent and your play style disrupts what the other team wants to do, you can create an advantage. I think Marshall Lonis, his improvement, Aiden Mahoney, that duo is going to be able to control things just enough to keep Grand Canyon at bay and to move on to that next round. Alabama and Charleston, another one that people have mentioned as an upset candidate. I just think for Alabama, I'm not a huge fan of what they've been able to do. I know defensively they have got a lot of problems right now, but I think against Charleston, they will have enough. They'll get it done against the Cougars in that first round just because they play similar style. Like they both want to get out and run. And if you run with Alabama, they might hang 110 on you. So, you give up 100 points to Alabama. I don't know if even if you're on fire that night, you're going to be able to keep up with them. So I'm rolling with Alabama in that one. Don't be surprised if they score 100 points there. But in that next round, I've got North Carolina over Michigan State. That one kind of feels to me like it might be the surprise one. But I just don't know. I don't really know. So I'm going with North Carolina, but kind of got that one circled to keep my eye on, regardless of which team makes it to face the Tar Heels in that second round. And then St. Mary's against Alabama. I'm going with St. Mary's here. I think that they probably will be able to throw off Alabama from their offensive game plan just enough. And we know if Alabama doesn't come out shooting well, they are vulnerable to lose. They are not playing good defense right now. They have not played defense in a while. So unless we see something that drastically changes our perception of their defense against Charleston, which I think is going to be difficult to do, I think you've got to ride with St. Mary's here in this matchup. Unfortunate because Alabama has one of the best offenses in the country, hands down. But you've got to be able to play defense to win in the NCAA tournament for sure. I've got North Carolina over St. Mary's on that side of the bracket. In the bottom half, New Mexico upsetting Clemson. I feel confident there. I kind of hinted at it in that first segment. They are way underseeded. They should be an 8 or a 9 seed. They are an 11 seed. You've got a Clemson team that by the metrics is probably a little bit overseeded. I don't think it's drastic. I think that's about where they should be. But still, a team that's not playing their best basketball right now coming into the tournament against a team that is red hot, has been winning left and right, and that really seems to have momentum coming into this, in addition to the chip that was just put on their shoulder. So I'm going with New Mexico there. Baylor against Colgate. Colgate, they're sneaky. If a 14 is going to beat a 3, it's going to be this one. I'm going to go with Baylor, though, just kind of by principle. There's not that many 14 over 3 upsets in college basketball. So we're rolling with Baylor. I'm going to go New Mexico over Baylor in that second round, though. This is me kind of taking my shot at where some of the chaos might start to come from. Like I said, this New Mexico team is red hot. So I'm going to take them over Baylor to advance to that next round. Maybe Baylor goes cold. Maybe, whatever it is. I think that is one that could come to fruition. And then I've got Nevada over Dayton. Again, these Mountain West teams are going to come out with something to prove. Nevada was a 6 seed in some bracketology predictions, 7 seed in others, and they end up with a 10. So that's a big, big drop. Dayton is a little bit above where a lot of people had them. They're about where I had them in the field, but I'm going to go Nevada here. Arizona against Long Beach State. How fun would it be if Long Beach State, who fired their coach, agreed to part ways with him before the conference tournament, decided to let him finish things out? He makes the NCAA tournament. How fun would it be if they were the upset team of the week and knocked off Arizona? But I can't predict that. I'm going with Arizona there. And then Arizona past Nevada, and then again past New Mexico. That's right. I'm going with the UNC versus Arizona, even though I don't believe it'll happen because I just can't identify how this gets avoided. Can't figure it out. How much fun would it be, though, for Caleb Love to go up against RJ Davis and Armando Bacot? That would be the premier Elite Eight game, just purely from a storyline standpoint. I don't even care about the basketball. I just want to see that matchup. I am going with North Carolina to advance to the Final Four there. That wraps up the left side of the bracket. When we come back, we will do the right side of the bracket and then wrap up with our final four picks. You're listening to Three True Values. Welcome back into Three True Values as we wrap up our NCAA Tournament field prediction show. We break down the entire bracket for you. We're halfway through it. We'll take you home on the right side of this bracket, starting in the South region where Houston is taking on Longwood in the opening round, going with Houston there. Now, here's the game that drew all the headlines. Everybody had something to say about it. Nebraska takes on Texas A&M. Now, what makes this so interesting? Former Nebraska athletic director Trev Alberts just took the Texas A&M AD job within the week. He left one school for another. Now they have to play each other in March Madness. And what makes it even more funny? I mean, you start to think it had to be planned, even though you know it wasn't, that this is just how the bracket got put together. But in the women's edition of the NCAA tournament, Nebraska will take on Texas A&M. So it's a big week for Trev Alberts. He gets a new job and has to watch his old job go up against his new job. That one won't be easy for him or his family, I am sure. I am rolling with Nebraska in that one, though. Keisei Tominaga has been incredible. He has some help on that team. It is not just him. Bryce Williams comes to mind as a guy who's shooting the ball well. I think that they have got, with Rinkmast, a good unit there, capable of beating this Texas A&M team. Texas A&M, a capable team as well, though. I don't want to overlook them. I think this one is a really, really good matchup. I'd put it just behind that Mississippi State, Michigan State game in terms of like purely a what are we going to see in this game aspect and trying to predict which team will win. It's very difficult. I'm going with Nebraska though, and I think Houston against Nebraska or against Texas A&M, we're going to have a live dog there. That could be the first spot that we see a 1 seed go out in this NCAA tournament. I'm going to predict Houston right now, but I would not be surprised if Nebraska or Texas A&M, whoever advances, gives Houston a big run for their money. Maybe they don't get it done, but I think that that is a vulnerable spot for the Cougars as they have to play two teams that really have a belief and a confidence that they can get that done. Moving down, Wisconsin and James Madison. A lot of people taking James Madison here. I'm going to go Wisconsin. I am going to believe that what we saw in the Big Ten tournament is more the truth than what we saw at the end of the regular season. I don't know if they turned a corner necessarily, but I'm going to believe in AJ Storr. I'm going to believe in Chucky Hepburn, what he was able to do. And then we know the compliments that they have on that team. Klesmet, who's been in a shooting slump, Tyler Wall, everything that they have on that roster. I'm going to believe that the Badgers can get it done and hold off this James Madison team, even though they have been incredible this season. This one, not going to be an easy one for the Badgers for sure. I'm going with Duke over Vermont. And then in that next round, I've got Wisconsin over Duke. I just think this Duke team has struggled at times to put things away, to really be as convincing as we want them to be. They just haven't quite had that deep NCAA tournament run feel that some Duke teams have. They haven't had that to me all season. And so I think that they will dip out here against the Badgers. I like Houston's chances, if they're able to survive that first one, to get past Wisconsin in that next game. As we go down here, Texas Tech and North Carolina State, the darlings with DJ Burns on that team. I'm going to go Texas Tech. I'm just going to lean in there that a team that just, they used everything that they had. 5 straight wins in 5 days. couldn't be easy on them. I know they get a few days off here to rest and get ready for this one, but it just can't be easy. And Texas Tech had extra days of rest from that Big 12 tournament. They've been playing in the toughest conference, so they've played teams much tougher than NC State throughout the season. So I'm going to roll with the Red Raiders there, while acknowledging that NC State would be a fun team to see advance into the next round. Kentucky and Oakland. Now, here's where we get the Kentucky run. I'm taking Kentucky in this one. I'm then going to take Kentucky over Texas Tech. I think those young guards, what they're able to do, I think they'll be able to just propel them back past both of those teams. Don't see any huge obstacle there. In the bottom half here, we've got Florida against the play-in candidates here. We'll have Boise State, of course, going up against Colorado. I'm going to take Florida, while acknowledging that this Florida team in some games looks like a potential Final Four team, a team that could go on this deep run, rival the best Florida teams we've seen. And then other times they look like, what are they doing? Are they even a March Madness team? And sometimes it's half to half. So we got to figure out what we're going to get from this Florida team. They lose Micah Henlogton to a terrible injury during the conference tournament. That was just brutal to watch. But they've got depth there in the big man rotation. Tyrese Samuel will step up even more. You'll have Alex Condon play an increased role. Thomas Houck has looked good. I think that they can cover up there just enough to survive and get through with what they have in that unit. Then Marquette against Western Kentucky. Marquette, I've got them rolling in this first round here. But that's when Tyler Kolek's injury is going to come into play. That oblique that he's dealing with, will it fully heal by the time they play Florida in the second round? That's going to be vitally important for this team. I cannot emphasize enough how important Tyler Kolek is going to be in this game, because I am picking Florida until I know what Tyler Kolek's health status is. So if I take Florida there, that means I've got a Kentucky-Florida game in the next round. I'm going to take Kentucky because, like I said, Florida has been inconsistent. Kentucky also inconsistent, but Kentucky's got the more talented team, and therefore I'm going to take the Wildcats there. That leads to Houston against Kentucky, and I'm going to roll with Kentucky. So Kentucky heads to the Final Four in my bracket. I know it's going to be controversial. People are going to talk. People are going to say things. And I don't really care. This is one of the most talented teams in college basketball, and a team that really knows what it needs to do. It's just about getting it done. Reed Shepherd should have the ball in his hands. Rob Dillingham should be in for periods of the game and just take over. Antonio Reeves is going to quietly get up to 15 to 20 points. They need the bigs to play defense. That's what they need. John Calipari hinting at using a big man rotation that puts two 7-footers on the court together. That'll be interesting. I can't wait to see what that means for the defense and if that can improve things for this Kentucky squad as we go through the rounds here. That wraps up the South region, so we move into the Midwest, where Purdue is the number 1 overall seed. And no, I'm not going to predict Montana State to beat them. We're going to take Purdue in this first round. We're going to take Utah State over TCU in that second round. We're going to go with the Mountain West teams. We think the Mountain West teams are going to come out with a vengeance, but I think it'll fade a little bit. Purdue will knock them off in that next round. Then we go to the thing that I promised you above all else. Weeks ago, I would have told you there is one team who I am picking to upset whoever they play. I don't care who they get matched up with. I am taking McNeese in their first game. Will Wade, Shahada Wells, what they've been able to do there, I'm not betting against it. I'm taking McNeese State in the 5-12 game, in the 6-11 game, whatever it ends up being. That's what I'm taking them. And here we are. They play against Gonzaga, who I have been singing the praises of and telling everyone that they're an NCAA tournament team all year. Now they have to play against McNeese State. I'm rolling with McNeese State. I'm not going to go back on my promise. But I think it's a tough matchup. This Gonzaga team perhaps a little bit overseeded, just barely. But I like that the committee made it very clear they were not a bubble team in any way at all. Coming into this, they had locked up and earned a spot in this NCAA tournament field. Kansas and Samford. Now, a lot of people picking this one. This is a big one. People are picking this as an upset, and I'm here to pump the brakes. Samford, yes, they want to play fast. They want to get up threes. But if Hunter Dickinson and Kevin McCullough are fully healthy, because that was the point. That's why they sat out the Big 12. It wasn't that they had some injury where they couldn't have gone under any circumstances. It was that Bill Self felt that they needed to get fully healthy to make the most of their NCAA tournament run. So, if we assume they're both fully healthy, I just think that the size, the physicality, and the talent level is going to combine to be enough to beat a fun play style. Because what is the enemy of getting out and running and just flying up and down the floor shooting threes? A big man who you're going to dump the ball down to, and he's just going to put it in the basket, turn, face up, shoot over you, get in there, and then when his point guard gets in the lane and shoots, he's going to grab the offensive rebound. You can't get out and run if you don't have the offensive rebound. So if he puts it back in, now you got to take the ball out of bounds. Can't get back. Kevin McCullough playing defense, add that into the mix, and I just think that this Kansas team has got enough to probably run away against Samford if they are healthy. That's the caveat. We're going to assume they're healthy for now because that's what Bill Self told us the point of all this was. If they come out and don't look like themselves, or if they don't suit up for that game, yeah, Samford is a very live dog there, and we will come back to it. South Carolina Kansas over McNeese State in that next round. Again, if they're healthy, I think they can roll through there. And then I'm taking Purdue over Kansas. I think Zach Edey kind of washes out what they are able to do. As long as Braden Smith is healthy there, that's the caveat there. Seemed to not be too serious, but just want to make sure. Got to cover the bases with these injuries in March when you talk about these big matchups. Now in the bottom half of the bracket, we've got South Carolina against Oregon. Oregon looked like a completely different team in the Pac-12 championship. I mean, there's not even comparable to what we saw earlier in this season. They looked like an NCAA tournament team. They looked like a real dangerous NCAA tournament team. And I really think a healthy N'Faly Dante is a scary sight for any team in the bracket. I am going to take Oregon over South Carolina. South Carolina's had a little Cinderella run of their own through the whole regular season. They've played really well. I don't know if they have enough to stop Dante down low. And then you combine that with Jackson Shelstad. I know that they're not super deep, but this Oregon team's got talent. They've never lacked that. It's been the injuries. The last couple of years, really. Oregon has been an NCAA tournament caliber team. They've had the March Madness stuff. They just have not been able to get healthy for long enough in the season to put it all together, to get a run and get the analytics that they needed to appear in the tournament. So they're in now. They eliminated all doubt. They won the conference tournament, and they get South Carolina. I think it's a brutal draw for South Carolina. So I'm rolling with the Ducks there, and then I'm going Creighton over Akron. I really like this Creighton team. I don't think it's been any secret all season long that I have loved the way that they play and the players that they have. Baylor Shireman, Tyshawn Alexander, Ryan Kalkbrenner, even Ashworth playing the point. I love what Mason Miller gives them in the corner. Being able to just shoot threes and play defense, that's all he wants to do. And he is good at it. Shoots them at a high clip. Like this Creighton team, I'm then going to take them over Oregon. I think that's where Oregon's kind of dream run ends. Ryan Kalkbrenner, a multi-time defensive, all-defensive team, Big East guy. I think he will slow down Dante just enough that Oregon depth is going to run out and not be able to carry them over the Blue Jays. Then in the bottom half of the bracket, we've got Tennessee. I know Tennessee fans, they got a heart attack when the Tennessee offense no-showed in the SEC tournament. It's scary. It's Rick Barnes' history. It's the biggest criticism of Rick Barnes and all of his teams is the lack of postseason offense, the inability to combine that defensive effort with a solid offense. I believe this team is different. I think that Dalton Connect will rebound from that game. I think that they run away from St. Peter's here. However, there is one nightmare scenario, which I've talked about since this bracket came out, that Tennessee cannot let happen. It's not in their control, don't get me wrong. But if you're a Tennessee fan, root against this from Tuesday until the weekend. The last thing you can have happen is have Virginia beat Colorado State in the first four and then beat Texas. Now, I'm going to roll with Texas. I've got Texas in that game. I think Colorado State probably beats Virginia. I think Virginia is probably the worst team in the field if we're looking for like who today can win a game. Excluding the teams seeded like 11 through 16, but including some of those 12 seeds and the 11 seeds. But here's what Virginia has. They have Ryan Dunn. And Ryan Dunn, for those of you who are unfamiliar with his game, is the best perimeter defender in college basketball, hands down. He is an NBA level defender today. He could guard NBA level players right now if he needed to. Ryan Dunn also plays small forward. So guess who he will be guarding on this Tennessee team? He's got more height than Dalton Connect. He's bigger than Dalton Connect. He is an elite defender. And if he can take Dalton Connect out of a game, we are going to see the Rick Barnes flashbacks all over again. So you cannot let that happen. If you were Tennessee, that is the worst case scenario. Now, the good news, I think they can beat Colorado State or Texas. So there's your good news. I am picking them to go through to the Sweet 16 to play against Creighton. Now, I'm going to take Creighton there. But remember, Tennessee fans, it gets much brighter. The tunnel gets much brighter. I think they have a better chance against Creighton than they do against even Virginia. So Tennessee and Creighton, I'm taking Creighton there, and I will take Purdue over Creighton. I've gone back and forth on this one. I have struggled with which team to pick here because I do really like this Creighton team. I like the way that they're built. I just think this Purdue team, if they can get through those first couple rounds, they're going to start to believe. And if you let a team that's this good start to believe, they're going to unlock even another level to what they have. So they advance to the Final Four. So that means our Final Four, as we wrap up the show here, is UConn against North Carolina on one side of the bracket, Kentucky against Purdue on the other side of the bracket. Now, I had somebody, this bracket, my picks got released on On3 and on my Twitter page over the last couple of days. And I had somebody comment and say 3-1 seeds, way to go out on a limb. And I don't know what they thought the exercise was, because this was not bold Final Four predictions. This was not Final Four predictions that could happen in a crazy parallel universe. This was Final Four predictions. And I picked a 3 seed to go. So it's not like I just phoned in this exercise. So regardless, there's no point in getting into all of that. But UConn against North Carolina, I'm going to give the Huskies a big edge here. I just think that they're a better team. I think that they match up well just about across the board with the Tar Heels in this one. So I'm going to roll with the UConn Huskies to make it to a second consecutive national title game. On the other side, you've got Kentucky against Purdue. This is the end of the road. I'm sorry for the Kentucky fans. They just don't have the defense to stop this Purdue team. Purdue should roll in that one, setting up UConn against Purdue. The battle of two giants. Donovan Clingan against Zach Edey. How about that battle on the interior? That'll be very fun to watch. And I am predicting for the first time in over a decade, back-to-back national champions UConn. I think Dan Hurley has really figured it out. He brings back maybe a better team than what he had last year. Stephon Castle, look for him to be a breakout player, somebody who can really raise his draft stock. When we think about UConn, we think about raising your draft stock. We think Kimball Walker, we think Shabazz Napier. I'm not saying he's going to be one of those two, but look out for him. He has looked a little bit better in the last few months than he did to open the season a little bit. So can he keep that rolling, get that momentum, and become another UConn legend with a deep NCAA tournament run, helping lead this team that already has Tristan Newton, Alex Caravan, Cam Spencer, Donovan Clingan, and they're just loaded. So I am rolling with UConn here as your national champ. This has been 3 True Values. We will be back next week to go through where I was right, where I was wrong in the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament. I'll be covering things hopefully from the Memphis Regional on Friday and Sunday. So I'll probably have some stuff up from that, as well as different columns. I've got my picks are up on on3.com, as well as you can take a look at what my final bracketology looked like, see how it compared to the field. I evaluated the 8 teams with the best path to the Final Four. You can check that out. Also, a column on the selection committee. What's wrong with the selection committee? We talked about that in the first segment. There's much more a deep dive on the different things that are wrong with the selection process in a column up at On3 as well. You can find all this on my Twitter page as well. We'll have more content throughout the week, keeping you up to date with college basketball as we reach the pinnacle. I really think Thursday and Friday are my favorite days of the week. It's not of the week, of the year when it comes to sports. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy it. Wall-to-wall coverage. Make sure you've got multiple TVs. You've got all the channels on. Make sure you watch every single game, however you have to do it, because this is March Madness. We're going to have some fun with it. Thank you for listening to 3 True Values. I'm James Fletcher.